Hey, good morning, everybody. How are you? Chad Thibodeau. Welcome to another Monday Morning Mentor. So glad that you guys are here. Today, what I want to do is, well, actually, before we get into what I want to do, if you're watching today, let me know who you are and where you're watching from, because today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to help you guys out on how to sort of separate yourself from your competition. So today what I want to do is I want to talk with you about how to create intellectual property and how to get paid for that intellectual property. So being a coach now for well over a decade, something I've come to learn is that one of the things that separates the really A-list coaches or consultants or strategists or whatever, and those who are sort of stuck in mediocrity is one side has created intellectual property that's unique to them that they could stand on, they can become known for. And the other is reading books and ripping other people's stuff off and then trying to implement that to the marketplace. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, trust me, because not all of us are designed to be curriculum creators. But if you want to know what the difference is between a seven-figure coach and a high five-figure coach, well, the difference is intellectual property. So what I want to do today is I want to show you how to create your very own intellectual property, because this could be the single largest differentiator between you killing your imposter syndrome, you showing up for your clients, and you believing in yourself enough that you can get paid for things. Okay, so first let's talk about what is intellectual property. So intellectual property is simply content, okay, content or frameworks that are unique to you that help you solve a problem in the marketplace, okay? Now, when you think about IP, I want you to think at a what we call a super high level, like that one thing that you want to become known for, right? So let's say that you're a personal development coach and you want to become known for personal development. That's at the really high level, okay? That's sort of the umbrella that holds everything together. But then you have the macro level, which could be like Tony Robbins has his Unleashing the Power Within, right? So that's like at the macro level. So like all of his IP helps you unleash the power within. And then he's got a sub macro level, which is like, okay, hey, today, I'm going to talk with you about how to create or how to leverage your finances so they pay for your dream, right? So that could be like a sub macro level. And then you have micro. Micro level is that level where it may be like his book, okay? But then you have sub micro, which is like one concept you're teaching. So like today, this is a sub micro teaching, okay? Because, I'm a business coach. So way up here, it's all about business coach. And a little bit below that, I help people launch coaching companies, and below that would be, I help people create prototypes so they can launch in beta so they can get paid to launch, right? Below that could be all sorts of things, from like my small event, big profit to my high ticket mastery. Below that could be things like, my stupidly irresistible offer, or it could be my one sentence power post or whatever. I've got hundreds of them, literally hundreds of them. And the process I'm going to show you here is the exact process that I use to be able to create that. So what you're going to learn today is really how to create like a micro and a sub-micro product, because this is really where all the money is, okay? So for instance, if you were to come into my Kavu program and you were to get my Launch 90X, curriculum, right? Because this is one of my curriculum books, okay? All the curriculum. This book is full of my intellectual property, okay? Full of it. Okay, so I'm just gonna open one, okay? So this here is, let's see. I'm trying to pick one that would be super unique. Okay. Okay. So like here we go. So like this is, what is this? This is what I call my starter kit, right? So I have an entire thing around my starter kit, right? And so what I do in mine is I have a written guide, a video training, a coaching call, and an indoctrination. So I'm like, okay, if you're going to have a starter kit, you're going to create a starter kit framework, okay, then these are the things that you need. And so I would go in and I would create intellectual property around my starter kit, I would teach this. So then this is unique. This is unique to me, and I can become known for creating starter kits that are designed to take strangers and turn them into clients, literally with one post. Okay, this is my thing, and so I can come in here and I can break down this, right? So this is all about, like, creating like the workbook or the lead magnet, so to speak, and then I can give examples of that, right? So this is like my version of like the 7-Step 2 Comma Club Award checklist, which is also a sub piece of intellectual property. Then I come in here and I've got like my frame, like, okay, how's it going to work? I've got all my framing. That's all intellectual. That's all intellectual property. Then I come in here and I say, okay, well, if you're going to do a funnel, well, here's what your funnel should look like, and I can break it down step by step for you, so you know exactly what your funnel should look like. And then I can give you an examples. Even these examples are different concepts of intellectual property. I come in and I break down the indoctrination, the email sequence, each step at a time, and I give all the examples. This is all intellectual property, okay? And what I know is just that one piece of intellectual property, that starter kit, and it's not even done. That starter kit is something that I can present to the market and I can get paid for it. I go on, I say, okay, well, then you have a video, right? Then I've got an exact script of like how to do the video. I forgot how good this stuff is, okay? It's the starter kit, right? And see, I get excited. I built this stuff. I created this stuff, but I'm like, gosh, man, that's really, really, really good. So if somebody wanted to create a starter kit to go from to present an idea to the masses and get strangers to be paying you very quickly, the starter kit is a very good way to do that. Well, that's all rooted from intellectual property. Okay, it's all rooted from that. And so what I've learned is and I just seeing that just lights me up, honestly, because I'm like, gosh, I forgot about that. And I've created so much intellectual property in my life, I honestly have forgotten most of the stuff that I created. And I go back to that and I'm like, okay, that's going live today because that's payable. That I can get paid on that today, right? And so I got a number in my head right now that I want to spend on Christmas, and I'm like, okay, hey, I'm gonna do a little. This is all on impromptu, by the way. I'm gonna do a little test to see if I can get my starter kit that I just realized I forgot that I had. See if I can get it to pay for my Christmas and for our vacation that we're gonna be going on, right? So this is the process of intellectual property. So how do you build that? How do you create that? How do you get something out of your head and into writing? And this is where the magic happens. So I want you to just change your state a little bit. I want you to sit up a little bit. If you guys are watching me live, if you're watching this in replay. And once again, if you're watching this live, let me know who you are, where you're watching from. I want to get to know you a little bit. And also, all those comments really help this teaching get out to the masses. So let's jump in. How do you create intellectual property? So inside of this book, okay, actually, before I switch over to that, inside of this book, okay, this is one of my curriculum books inside of our coaching program. Inside of this book, we have a thing that I call the 360 degrees IP snapshot, okay? And one of our coaches and my good friend, John, brought this concept to us from something that he saw and he adapted, okay? It's called the 360 degree IP snapshot. We teach you this inside of our CAVU program, inside of our Launch 90X. And the idea is that intellectual property flows into 3 categories, okay? Content, concept, that's supposed to say context. I never noticed that. Look at this. I've had this book for 2 years. I never noticed it's got a typo in it. So it's context, concept, content. Okay, that's the three C's. Okay, so it's context, concept, content. Okay, though that's how you do it. But even that was really big. And so then what we do is we break it down into 4 components. We say, okay, it's got to have a model, a metaphor, a study, and a story. So a model, a metaphor, a study, and a story. And so, but you're like, okay, Chad, well, that's good. But you'll see right here in the middle, right here in the concept, okay, the content, the concept is what we call a declarative statement. So I'm going to show this to you on the screen, and I think that you'll really benefit of this. Now I've got my handy dandy little whiteboard going here. I hope this makes sense to you. But here's the idea. Okay, so the idea is that everything starts with like a concept. Okay, a concept. So like a declarative statement. And once again, we're going micro here, or we're going micro here. Okay, so everything starts with a declarative statement. So, for instance, so like if you were to tell me, "Hey, Chad, I want to be a financial coach." Okay, so let's say that's what you want to be. You want to be a financial coach. Okay, the Virgo in me is getting aggravated by that. There we go. I want to be a financial coach. I would say, great, wonderful. You want to be a financial coach. What's something you know about being a financial coach, okay? Or if you tell me, "Hey, Chad, I want to be a fitness coach," I'll be like, great. Well, what's one thing you know about being a fitness coach? If you wanted to be, a life coach, I'd say, fantastic. Well, tell me one thing that you know. So it starts with what's one thing you know about. Okay, what's one thing you know about? So, for instance, let's just take my own. Okay, one thing I know about business coaching is that that it takes the same amount of energy to sell a $25,000 product as it does a $250 product. Okay, so I would come in here and I would say, okay, I would write this down. Okay, so it takes the same amount of money or same amount of energy and effort. Let's use that word, effort, energy, skill. We use 3 different words to sell a $25,000 product as it does a $250 product. Okay, so I would start with this as my declarative statement. Okay, so when you're creating intellectual property, you're going to come in here and say, okay, what's one thing I know? Okay, so one thing I know is it takes the same amount of effort, energy, and skill to sell a $25,000 product as it does do a $250 product. Okay, now the reason why this is important is because up here at the macro level, I would want to sell like my high ticket mastery. Okay, so let's say that this is the product that I'm trying to sell. Okay, so my declarative has got to come up here, and it's got to marry my product that I'm ultimately selling. Okay, so for instance, if you're selling life coaching, then you want your declarative to be able to align itself with whatever it is you're selling. Okay, that's important. So if you're trying to sell life coaching, you're not going to tell me something really cool about a car, because it doesn't make sense. You want to tell me something really cool that you know about life coaching. So for me in business coaching, especially as it relates to like my high ticket program, I say, and I've proven over and over, that it takes the same amount of effort, energy, and skill to sell a 25K, 200K. So it starts with a declarative statement. So I'm going to build my entire intellectual property around this particular declarative statement. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to, so this is what we call the declarative statement. Then I'm going to give an explanation. Okay, an explanation. What I mean by that is just that. What do you mean by that? Okay, so I'm going to give an explanation. So I'm going to come here and say, and I'll explain what I mean by that. Okay, so if the declarative is, hey, it takes the same amount of effort, energy, and skill to sell a $25,000 product as it does a $250 product, and then I'll come in and explain it. Okay, and so what I mean by that is, right, and then you'll come in here and say, what I mean by that and you're just going to get the thought out of your head and into writing. Okay, what I mean by that is XYZ. Okay, so like for instance, in this situation, what I mean by that is if it takes the same amount of effort, energy, and skill to sell a $25,000 product than to sell a $250 product, then chances are when you're starting your business, you're better off starting high ticket than low ticket. The reason is because you have to be more of an expert to sell a low ticket product than you do a high ticket product. Okay, now that's another declarative. We can go off on that. And the reason why you have to be more of an expert is you need a bigger following. Because if you're gonna make $100,000, okay, let's say you want to make $100,000 per year. Okay, well, what's going to be easier? Okay, if I have a $25,000 product, then I only have to sell 4 of them. If I have a $250 product, I have to sell 400 of those. Okay, so I can easily justify, well, what do you think is easier, 4 or 400? Well, 4, right? And the way I explain it is like, let me ask you, Johnny, if I was to give you my step-by-step process and you were to work 40 hours a week only doing my process, laser focused on doing this, do you think you could sell 4 of those per year? Yeah, I do. Okay, well, if you think you can sell 4 of those per year and you're trying to make $100,000, or 400 of those a year and you're trying to make $100,000, which one would you rather do? Well, I'd rather only have to sell 4 of those. Okay, great, wonderful, right? So see, what I'm doing is I'm allowing my intellectual property to act as the fodder that I'm going to use ultimately to sell. Okay, I don't know if I've ever used the word fodder in a training before or not. You guys put that word in. That's a good word. If you guys watching this on live, let me know you're watching by using the word, putting the word fodder. Let's see if you even know how to spell it. Fodder. Okay. I don't think I've ever even used that word in teaching before. So that was pretty good. That's my new word of the day, fodder. Okay. And so as we're creating this intellectual property, we're going to align everything with our product, High Ticket Mastery. We start with a declarative statement. What's one thing you know about this? Great. Okay, so write it in a statement, and then you're going to come here. You say, okay, well, what does that mean? Okay, what does that mean? Okay, then the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to do what we call the Big Four. Okay, the Big Four. Okay, the Big Four start with the model, the metaphor, the study, the story. Okay? So we call it the model, the metaphor, the study, and the story. Okay? And so what you want to do is you want to see, okay, can I model, can I put this in a visual a visual way of learning this? Okay, can I? Is there a metaphor? It's sort of like this. Can I do that? Can I create a study or find a study that validates like what it is that I'm saying? Can I do that? Or is there a story? Okay, and that helps support what it is that I'm trying to do. So these are all the things that you want, and I wanted to see if I put that in there. Yes, I did. Okay, so a model, a metaphor, a study, and a story. Okay, so for instance, if I want to come in here and I want to say, okay, if I'm trying to sell my High Ticket Mastery program, and I want to say, hey, it takes the same amount of effort, energy, and skill to sell a $25,000 product as it does a $250 product. What I mean by that is, if you're trying to make $100,000 per year, and you have a $25,000 product, you only have to sell 4 of those, or you have a $250 product, you have to sell 400 of those. My gut tells me that if you spend 40 hours a week using my step-by-step logical linear process, that you're going to be able to sell 4 a lot quicker than you are going to be 400. So therefore, you might as well go high ticket. Okay, and then I can go on, and then I can break this out. So then what I can do is I can pick one, a model, a metaphor, a study, or story. Which one do I want? So let's just say that we start with metaphor. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say, okay, it's sort of like, okay, which I actually think is a simile. Isn't a simile where you use the word like or as or something like that? I think it's actually, we call it a metaphor, but I actually think it's a simile, okay? Which would make sense. Study, story, simile. Then I can get my S's. I like S's, but it's a metaphor. You know what a metaphor is. Okay, it's sort of like, okay? And then I would think about okay, well, what do I have to do? Okay? So I could just simply say something like, and I'm totally making this up on the spot. I'm not putting zero thought behind a metaphor. So, but I want to see if I can create like a metaphor. So I would think of something like, okay, little versus big here, right? Okay, I could say something like, it's the difference between like what could I say? I got to come back to that. It's not coming to me right now. A story could be, this could be your story. So I would always use mine. So I would come in and I would use a story on how I went from $0 to $250,000 in 90 days. Selling a high ticket product. So I would tell that story. It would captivate people. A study would be something like, there's a study in like Russell Brunson's Expert Secret. okay, where he comes down and he breaks the whole concept of high ticket down, right? So I could do that study. A model would be like a Venn diagram or or something like that. And so like if I was coming in here and I was going to teach like, my three components of a high ticket product, I would come in here and I would put like time, money, know-how. Okay, I would come in here and I would illustrate my concept of time, money, and know-how as it relates to high ticket, and that would be my model. Okay, so this is the start of my intellectual property. It's like, okay, so what's one thing I know? Let me put it in a statement. Let me explain it. What I mean by that is, okay, and then come up with a model, a metaphor, a study, or a story. Now, do you have to have all four? No, you don't. But you need at least two, and I prefer one from each side, okay? So for me, the reason why I'm struggling with the metaphor is I've really never used it because I always use my model and I always use a story, okay? Because these two things right here really, really work for me in the way that I think and the way that I learn, so I use those two things a lot, okay? I do, if I had an example, which I could go to GPT and get one in a second, I could come up with a metaphor. The study's not necessarily important for me unless it's what we call a case study, okay? A case study, and we'll show you that in a minute, okay? But I call this the 360 IP snapshot, okay? So the way that I like to do it when I'm building out my IP is I look at it like this. So I draw a circle, okay? I draw a circle, and then just as you see those four pillars, I put those up here. So I go model, metaphor, study, story. Okay, I put those there. Okay, so this is, and then I'll put my declarative in the middle. And what I want to do is I want this little map, this little model that I'm showing here. I want this to fill out, to flesh out your intellectual property. Okay, so I'm going to come in here then, and you can see that I've got 12 components that could go in there. Core competency, unique mechanism, polarizing hooks, payoff statement, model, metaphor, study, story, problem, framework, future pacing, statistic. I like to stick to the right of this, okay? So like I'll come on here and I'll say, okay, and once again, these are just pillars, right? These are no particular order. So I'll come in here and I'll just go problem, okay? Problem. What problem does my concept, same amount of effort, energy, skill to sell a $25,000 product, $250 product solve? What problem does it solve? Well, it probably solves a lot of them, okay? One, cash. It probably solves time, okay? And I actually go on to show them that it's easier for them to sell a high-ticket product as a novice or an amateur than it is, a low ticket, just mainly because of the amount of people that you have to sell to. So it solves cash, time, and it solves following, okay? So I can just say, okay, it solves those three things. Then I can come back to my four. Okay, bam, I got that. Great. Do you have a framework, a logical and linear framework that can help you flesh this out? I'm like, yes, I do. So I can come here and I can go framework. And I could come in and I can say, okay, if somebody's going to build a high ticket product, okay, if somebody's going to build this, what is it? Let me erase it because I don't like it. What is it that they need? Okay, so like how do they go from like, no frowny face, no product to having a high ticket product, right? And so I have a system that I call the POI. The point, it's actually POINTER, but we only use the POI for this. Okay, so POI, and I'm like, okay, so we're going to start with a product, and then under the product I have a framework. So we help them create a name, a description, and an outcome. We help them create a promise statement. We help them create a framework. We help them price it. Actually, the price would be the next level. Okay, so the goodness gracious, those are the three. Okay, if you were to go through my if you were to go through my Launch 90X, there's P. So it's product pathway, product. Excuse me. Minimum viable product, pathway, promise, proof, price. There we go. That was the thing. But right here, just starting with the P, yes, I would help them come up with a name, a description, outcome, a promise, or a frame. Okay? Then I would say, okay, now we're going to go to offer. Okay? And the offer, I have a framework for it, 4 components, which is called measurable results, silly math, expensively affordable, and stupidly irresistible. So we walk them through those 4. And then an internal launch, I have a 5-step internal launch where we come in and we do a beta launch right here. So we create a beta team, or a launch team, as we call it. Let me scoot this over. So we create a launch team. We do a training. We do the notes method, and we do DM follow-up. Okay? We do a DM follow-up, right? So I've got a whole framework around how I do this, okay? So I know I've got a framework. Then I go to future pacing, okay? Future pacing. Future pacing is like this, okay? So future pacing says, okay, what happens if this comes to fruition, okay? If you actually build a $25,000 product and sell it, what would life look like? Okay, so in my intellectual property, I'm going to future pace them, and I'm going to talk about that. And then the 4th component is then I'm going to give some kind of statistic. Okay, I'm going to give some kind of statistic. Okay, so a stat would say, I could go back to my 170 people that I've helped create a 2 Comma Club award, and I would say 152 of the 170 people that I helped create $1 million in their business have a product that they sell that's $10,000 or more. Okay, so that would be a stat. Okay, to sort of just get your attention, right? So so the stat. These are components of what we call the 360 IP snapshot. Okay, the component. Okay, now there's other ones too. This is going to overwhelm you, so I'm sort of staying off the left side. Okay, this is the core competence, unique mechanism, polarizing hooks, payoffs. We'll get that later. We don't need that. Okay, so really what I need is I just need this. I need, okay, what's one thing I know? Let me put that down. What does that mean? Great. Do I have a model, a metaphor, a study, or story? Pick 2. Okay, great. I've got that. Now, can I fill in the blanks a little bit with, okay, what problem does it solve? Do I have a framework in order to make this happen? Okay. And once again, when we talk about framework, we're talking about framework around the declarative. You want to make sure that, if you're saying something like, it's the same amount of effort, energy, and skill to sell a $25,000 product to a $250 program, all of this stuff has got to be around that declarative. Okay, that declarative. That's important. Okay, so when I'm teaching this, like if I was teaching, this is how I'd organize it. Okay, so let me run down here now. So now, if I was putting this in like a lesson, here's and by the way, inside of my Launch 90X, let me see if I can just turn to it real quick. Inside of my Launch 90X program, I teach this step by step, logically and linear, and just so you have it all. But I have a way to build all this out. I'm trying to see if in this book, I have 3 of these, so not everything is in every one. So let me see if it's in this one here. It may not be. This may be an older one. It doesn't look like it's in here. Anyway, I've got it memorized so I can show you. But it is in here. Look at this. There it is. Okay. So the idea is, how do you take your intellectual property and turn it into something, right? So so first, how is intellectual property manifested? Okay, so it could be a video. I don't know why it's light. It could be a video. It could be a lesson. It could be a chapter. It could be a keynote, or it could be a product. Okay, so these are the 5 ways that your intellectual property can manifest itself, right? So a video, and there's different types of videos. There's a training video like I'm doing. There's a short. There's a reel. There's all sorts of videos. A lesson could be, hey, today I want to teach you whatever. A chapter could be, I'm going to write this as a chapter in my book. A keynote could be you're invited to speak on stage and you're teaching for the next 45 minutes on this one concept. Or a product is, hey, I want to sell you this, okay? So these are the 5 ways that your IP can show up, okay? So what you want to do, how you turn this into sellable information is, number 1, you start with the declarative, okay? This is how I would write it. Okay, you start with the declarative. So I would start, like if I was doing a keynote, I would jump on stage and I would say, today I want to talk with you about how it takes the same amount of effort, energy, and skill to sell a $25,000 product over a $250 product, right? Okay, and then I'm going to move my explanation. Now, let me ask you a question. How many of you does the idea of creating a $25,000 product excite you? And how many of you does it just scare the living bejesus out of you, right? Okay. Now, let me tell you what I mean by this, okay? How many of you think you would like to make $100,000 in the next 30, 60, 90 days, right? Okay, so I'm getting things. Okay, if you were to sell $100,000 and I could have on stage, right? So this could be my model. On stage, I could have a jar, right? A jar of 400 little jelly beans in it, okay? And then on a little table, I could have 4 jawbreakers, right? Okay, and I was going to say, if you want to make $100,000 and every one of these jelly beans inside this jar represented a cell, and every one of these gobstoppers represented a cell, okay? And you had 30 days to make this happen. Which one do you think you could do easier? Selling each and every one of these or just selling these 4, right? So I would step into it, and I would use that as my model, okay? And then if I had a metaphor, I could use it, So I would go like this. So I would start with the declarative, and then I would go to the explanation, and then I'm going to pick a model, a metaphor, a study, or a story, okay, to teach right here, okay? So just like I did for you, okay? So I just picked one of those things: model, metaphor, study, story. So I chose the model, and I had a jar of jelly beans here and 4 little gobstoppers here. Which one do you think would be easier? So now I'm beginning to get buy-in. So now once I've done those, okay, and I can use 2 if I want, okay? When I've done those, so I would use the model, and then I would use my story. Then I would talk about my story here, where I went from broke to 250K. So the model, I would use the jelly beans, and the story, I would use how I went from 0 to 250K in 90 days. Okay? And then from there, okay, I'm going to move on to my circle, and I'm going to say, let's talk about problem. Okay, and I'm just going to go in this order. You don't have to go in this order, but I'm just going to go in this problem. So I'm going to start with problem. Okay, so then I would go in here and I would talk about a problem. Okay, one of the problems that they have. Some of you guys are thinking that, Chad, I would love to sell high ticket, but only guys like Tony Robbins sell high ticket. Okay, and then this is where I would come in and talk about, once again, I'm in the problem. I would come in and talk about hey, listen, if nothing will make you more money faster than having and selling a high ticket product. Some of you guys think that only Tony Robbins can sell it because you may have to be this big wig. But what I want to tell you is that it actually, if you're going to make $100,000, okay, it's actually more likely that you do that with a high ticket product than a low ticket product, because only Tony Robbins, who has a massive following, can sell a low ticket product and make that much money. You don't have that kind of following. So what I want to do is you can actually sell and make $100,000 in the next 7 to 10 days using a high ticket model like I'm going to show you. So I'm going to speak about the problem. Okay, I could talk about cash time of following. I bring those up right here. Okay, so cash time following. So I'd bring those up right here, and then I'm going to move into my framework. Okay, And then I'm always interactive. So I'm like, so how many of you guys want to know how to do this? How many of you guys want to know the step-by-step process? So then I would teach my framework. And here's how you teach your framework. Okay? So you're going to teach your framework. So POI is the framework of what you have to do in order to get a high ticket program. So once again, if you're writing a book, this is the flow. If you're writing a long email, this is the flow. If you're writing a landing page, this is the flow. If you're doing a talk like this is the flow. This is how you formulate your intellectual property. So I would come in and I would teach my thing. Okay, I would teach my stuff. And so I like to introduce these with a few concepts, okay? So I'm going to teach this. So if I'm going to teach this stuff, here's how I teach it. Number one, I make the points imperatives, okay? What do I mean by that? So if this is P is minimum viable product, I'm not just going to say P minimum viable product. I'm going to use an imperative, like a statement, like an instruction. I'm going to say, number one, you have to create a minimum viable product. So the imperative would be create a minimum viable product, right? And then I would go on and I would teach that, and I would tell a story or give an illustration around this, and I would break down on how to create a minimum viable product. And then I'm gonna use some kind of transition, and then I'm gonna go number two, have an offer but make it stupidly irresistible. And I would go and teach that. Then I'll transition, okay, and then I would say sell it to people you know, because if people you know won't buy it, that there's no way that strangers are going to buy it. So I would come in here, but I'm going to make these imperatives, okay? So I'm going to come in, I'm going to make each one of my steps an imperative. So number one, create a minimum viable product. Number two, create an offer and make it stupidly irresistible. Number three, launch it to people you know. That's my internal launch, okay? Launch to people you know. So the reason why I do that is because when you give statements in imperatives like that, it gives us, it's almost like a stair-stepping effect. Okay, I know exactly what to do. Step one, I'm going to do this. Step two, I'm going to do this. Step three, I'm going to do this. Okay, so that's how we're going to create that. Okay, and so we start with the declarative. We go to the explanation. We use a model, a metaphor, study, or story. Okay, and I pick two. This is like Panera Bread. Pick two. Okay, and then for me, I'm going to go problem, framework. Okay, future pacing. The reason why I want to do future pacing is because I want to sell this thing, right? So I'm in future pacing. So imagine what life would look like if I helped you create your very own high-ticket product. I'm talking about a great one. A one with a name, a description, an outcome, one that had a logical linear framework that moved people from where they are to where they want to go, one that you believed in, one that was designed around your intellectual property, that you knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that if people bought this, they were going to get a result. Imagine what life would look like if you had one of those, and then you ran traffic, and then every 10 people who opted into a lead magnet bought one. Your business plan becomes super simple, right? Now your business plan isn't how many high-ticket products I can sell. Your business plan is how many lead magnets can I give away. And it's much easier to give something away than it is to sell it. So if you know that every 10 lead magnets you give away is going to turn into one high-ticket sell, your job today is to wake up and to give away as many lead magnets as possible, right? And so you can make that make sense. So that's called future pacing. So imagine what life would look like if, okay, that's what future pacing is. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to give a stat, okay? Now, I've been lucky. If you guys see all these awards on my back wall here, these are called 7-figure or 2 Comma Club awards. And I've been privileged to be able to create 4 of those for our business, but I've been able to create 170 of those for clients, okay? 170 of my clients have gotten at least a 2 Comma Club award, right? So that's pretty cool. And so I would come in and I would give a stat, I would say I'd come up here. I'm sorry, out of 170 people who got the 2 Comma Club awards, 152 of them had a product that was over 10K, right? So I could give that stat. All right. So as you can see, the key to 2 Comma Club is creating a high ticket program, and then what I can do is I can do what's called qualifying questions. Now your IP stopped right here. Okay, now we're moving into sell. I move into qualified questions, and then I go to CTA. I'm missing one because there's 10 steps. I'm missing a step, but that's okay. Okay. Qualifying questions, and then CTA. So qualifying questions we'll get to another day. It's just 3 questions that I ask to make sure that they're qualified to create a $10,000 program, and then call to action is what I want them to do next, okay? But 1 through 7 is how you build intellectual property. So if you're literally just take something, okay? Literally, I can take anything. And I can walk you through those 7 steps, and then I can break down, and now you have a video, a lesson, a chapter, a keynote, or a product in which you can sell, okay? And it's really not all that difficult. It looks a little difficult because I'm giving massive amount of content right here, but if you just look at it this way, where we come up here and we say, okay, I'm going to sell something. What I'm going to sell? I want to sell my high ticket mastery, okay? What's one thing I know about high ticket? Okay, not about my program, but about high ticket, because that's the method. Okay, and then, okay, now explain that. What does that mean? Okay, great. Now pick 2, a model, a metaphor, a study, or a story. So I pick 2. So for me, I pick these 2. I typically always pick those 2 because those are my favorite. Okay, pick 2. Okay, so I've got model, metaphor, study, got those checked off. Okay, and then I'm going to come over here. I want a problem, a framework, a future pace, and a stat. And I like to go in that order, okay? Now, when you get to the point where you're ready to pitch, you'll need these, but that's not important right now. You could sell just with these, okay? Problem, framework, future pacing. So I go in this order. Problem, framework, future pacing, stat. That's the order that I go in. So if my model and my metaphor, my study and my story are my biggies, okay? And I typically always choose the model and the story. Okay, that's just sort of what I do. Okay, then I'm good to go, and I can just put them in this order. Okay, I can start with the declarative, move to the explanation. I can do my pick 2. I can then tell the problem that they have. Okay, I can create a framework on how to solve that problem. I can future pace them on what life would look like if that problem was solved. I can give them a statistic that sells them. Then I can ask them some questions and tell them to get on a call with me. Okay, and that's how I take my intellectual property and I turn it into something that I can sell. So if you were to look at my high ticket mastery program, you would see this exact model demonstrated in my high ticket program. Because and I wasn't planning on doing this, but let me just see if I can pull this up real quick, because I haven't logged into this website in literally 3 years, so we'll even see if it's still a website. I don't even know if I still have it. Oh, I do have it. Okay. And can I log in? Is there a login button? Let me see. I don't see a log. Oh, look at that. Member login. Hold on. We may be lucky here. Let's see if it... Look at this. Okay. So once again, I haven't seen this. I wasn't planning on doing this, but you'll get the idea. Okay. So if I come here, what am I doing? How do I get there? It's not flipping for me. Oh, I know why. Hello. There we go. Now let's see if it works. There we go. Okay. Yeah, so I haven't looked at this for years, so apologize. But you'll get here. So if you come in here into my high ticket mastery, you can see that I've got my learning tracks, okay? Like the why behind high ticket, crafting your high ticket offer, creating your pathway to clients, 2 perfect formulas for gaining the perfect client, building a platform that attracts your perfect client, how to move your clients from your inbox to your bank account, add massive value so clients pay you, make your messaging matter, Facebook is your friend, how to get people excited to purchase your offer, the quick launch, and then apparently this video is not there anymore, how to leverage events to sell high ticket programming. Okay, so this is my intellectual property as it relates to my high ticket mastery. Okay, and so this is what I would sell on the back of that training. Okay, and then I could come in here and you'll notice that okay, you'll notice that like I start my description with a declarative. The easiest way to get ahead in your business is to create a high ticket product. That's simple. That's a declarative. Okay. Let's see what this one is. It's been years since I've looked at this. I mean, look how much gray or brown I have. Silly math, expensively affordable, stupidly irresistible are three of the factors in creating an offer people can't wait to buy. Oh, I want to learn that. Okay. Helping your clients get from where they are to where they want to go is the difference between theory and practice. See, that's a declarative. Okay. I haven't seen this in years. So work with people who give you energy, help you find significance, and are most likely to get results. Declarative. Okay. Experts build platforms that elevate their expertise, driving up the price and value of the product. Okay. So this is all about how to build a platform. In this class, Chad shows you how to handle the discovery call and pivot them to becoming a client. Terrible. That's absolutely terrible. I should not do that. But this is a declarative. How to move your clients from your inbox to your bank account. That's a declarative. Right? And this is my client's method, CLIET. This is actually one of my favorite trainings that I've ever done all time, is this one right here. Okay, so what's interesting is, so just as I'm going through my intellectual property this morning, okay, as I'm going through this, what's fascinating to me is it's coming back to my mind that, gosh, I'm pretty valuable. I actually have a lot of things that I could sell, right? So sometimes we try to sell the collective, and we forget that we have the micro that we can sell as well. So today I saw the starter kit that I totally forgot about that I can definitely sell. I've got my like with this IP snapshot that I can sell. I've got my entire high ticket mastery that I can sell. I saw my how to move clients from their from your inbox to your bank account. I've got that I can sell. I've got all kinds of things I can sell, and it's all around intellectual property. Okay, so yes, people want to buy you. Yes, people want to buy your product. Yes, people want the result that they want from their product. But at the end of the day, if you have intellectual property that's unique and proprietary to you, it makes your program seem so much more credible and easily, and it would make it easily sold. Okay, so I want you to start with intellectual property. If you're trying to create a coaching program, you need your own intellectual property. It's amazing how quickly we can get this for you. Typically in our Yellow Brick Road, you walk away after day one with your IP all set up. This past Wednesday, I had a guy by the name of Danny, who was an awesome guy, and we went down to my office, and just in a couple hours on the whiteboard, we fleshed out his entire intellectual property, because you have to have IP to sell. It's not okay just to sell a product or a program. You have to have intellectual property that backs you up. And if you have that IP, you can go places. If you guys need some help creating your own intellectual property, I would love to be able to help you with that. I don't even know if this, like, you can see how organized I am today. I don't even know if this link works, but we'll see. I'm going to go here to, it does. You can go to schedulechad.com. That's schedulechad.com. So schedule.com, and you can just book a call with me. Okay, absolutely free of charge, and I'll jump on there. It takes about, I think you can reserve 45 minutes. We typically don't need 45 minutes. We typically only need 15 to 20 minutes, but I can get you pointed in the right direction when it comes to your intellectual property and help you flesh it out, help you get it organized, so you can take that intellectual property, bring it to the marketplace, and begin making money. All right, guys, God bless you guys. We will see you very soon.